welcome everyone tonight to Beer Club. I'm so excited. So many members have joined and we have so many awesome speakers for everyone tonight. We wanted to welcome Professor Dawkins. He's going to chat a little bit about one of our members, Andrew Cooper. We have Christopher from Daleview Biscuits and Beer here. We are going to be drinking and sampling 2 of his yummy beers. We have Celeste from Harlem Brew here, also going to speak about her 2 beers we have, Harlem Sugar Golden Ale and the Harlem 125 IPA. And I'm trying to look if we have her here yet. Denise is going to zoom in from Montclair Brewery. So we were just going to start with Christopher. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to have you here. And I was going to start with the Pocketful Pilsner just because it's lighter, but Chris, between that and the Dr. Ann, do you have a preference on?
Actually, I don't, but I am drinking Pocketful of Shells right now.
Perfect. So let's do that. So if everyone wants to crack open the Pocketful Pilsner yellow can, and Christopher, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you started your brewery and any tasting notes you might have?
Hey guys, thank you for having me. First off, my name is Chris. I own and operate Daleview Biscuits and Beer. I got into beer by coincidence. 9 years ago, I got a Mr. Homebrew kit, Mr. Beer kit for Father's Day. And it started from there. I was like, oh, making beer can't be this easy. So I started on the interwebs trying to figure out how to make beer. And long story short, I'm here now. So with the Pocketful of Shells, it's a faux Pilsner. We use a Quebec yeast to make this. You should get a good bit of clove and banana notes from this one. I think it's smooth going down. One of my employees said this was like it should be a summer beer and should have been put out during the middle of winter.
I wish I had some to drink.
I know.
Yeah, we should have sent out. Yeah.
We totally should have next time.
Yeah, I've been wanting to taste Chris's beer.
And Chris, where does the name Daleview come from?
I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina. And Daleview is a subdivision in Columbia that I grew up in. And that's also where my middle name came from as well. My mom liked Dale so much, she decided to name me Christopher Dale.
Nice. That's awesome.
I have to ask about the biscuits.
Go for it.
Biscuits? Do you guys actually make like biscuits and stuff to go along with it?
We make everything. Everything is made from scratch.
And it's all gluten-free, right, Chris?
All the food is gluten-free.
Wow.
So crack open the Dr. Ann and let's taste that.
So Dr. Ann Polly is a dark ale. One thing I decided to do, and what I have pretty much done throughout while making beer, since I started making beer professionally, is naming the beers after significant civil rights people or people of color. We have 4 beers out now that's focused on unsung women of the civil rights movement. And Dr. Ann was the first one to come out. So the original plan was to brew a stout for Dr. Ann, but I poorly planned and didn't have all the ingredients needed. So we decided to brew a dark ale instead. You should get a good bit of toffee and a little caramel from this one, and a good bit of a malt sweetness on the back side.
This is like a coffee beer. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's delicious. Can you tell us about Dr. Anna Polly Murray?
So I'm not like I'm on the spot, but sure I can. She was one of the leaders who worked with doing some of the sit-ins. She's also one of the first female Episcopal ministers appointed to ministry. She went to Howard University, where she was planning on going to law school, but ended up being a rebel, according to them, because of unjust practices they had towards women. So instead of going to law school there, I think she made a uproar and had policies changed. She ended up going to Harvard. Graduated from Yale Law School. But she was a significant person in movement of desegregating lunch counters.
Thanks. That's really interesting, and it's delicious. These are both delicious. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. We're gonna move with Celeste. Are you there, Celeste?
I think
There we
I'm
are.
here.
Hi.
Hi,
Good. So Celeste is the owner of Harlem Brewery, and we have her Harlem Sugar Golden Ale, which is your 1 bottle in your 6-pack. And then we also have the Harlem 125 IPA in the can. So do you have a preference, Celeste? I was gonna suggest the Golden Ale first, but you're the pro.
That's fine.
Yeah?
Start with ale.
Celeste, why don't you introduce yourself? Why did you start the brewery? A little bit about yourself.
Yes. I started the brewery in 2000. I started home brewing in the mid 90s. And why did I start brewing? Well, a couple of reasons. One, I was totally obsessed with Ben and Jerry's ice cream. When I started started home brewing, I was helping run the first Ben and Jerry's partner shop, which was a homeless shelter that owned a Ben and Jerry's partner shop at the corner of 125th and 5th Avenue. I love ice cream, especially chocolate ice cream, and kind of needed a break from that. Not exactly, but I did start making some small batches, generally at night after I left the ice cream shop and the shelter, which served homeless men coming out of incarceration, Vietnam vets, and just men that were trying to get, reconnected to life and opportunities. And the Ben and Jerry's ice cream shop model allowed them to actually work there. And I live right around the corner from there. And I love cooking. I grew up here in the South. Right now I'm in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and this is a tobacco warehouse that we're in the process of converting to a brewery. And I just love Southern traditions, cooking with, pretty much everything, but I like putting things in my food and beer. And like many brewers, I ended up with a home brewing kit as a gift. Was able to use my mom's stew pot to put grains in, as many brewers use the pot method to get started. And I just fell in love with it. The aromas, all the nostalgia. I'm an avid gardener, so I love growing things that I put in my beers. I love growing hops because they're perennials. So annuals are good, but perennials, they come back. So I like that. So all of that, I think this sort of touched on the sensibilities that I have for the craft of brewing, the community of brewing, connecting in Harlem, and using the whole brewing experience as a platform to help revitalize the community, which is what we're doing here in Rocky Mount. So it was, I would say, a combination of just love for eating good food and connecting to people and organizations. The Harlem Sugar Hill Golden Ale is really a tribute to the neighborhood of Sugar Hill in Harlem. I live on what's technically considered the beginnings of Sugar Hill at 141st Street and Convent Avenue. And it's really about celebrating this iconic community, which was very, very central to the Harlem Renaissance. And like you've heard, beer, there's a very interesting place for how we use that platform to celebrate our history and culture. And Sugar Hill was our flagship beer. We've been selling the beer for 20 years. Our first order was Sylvia's Restaurant. Mm. And that's where we started. It's been an amazing journey. And it's a light, easy drinking beer. It's definitely a detour from the IPAs. A little bit of a hint of citrus and sweetness from the malt. The sweetness, Sugar Hill, the sweetness of the malts. That's sort of a nice sort of alignment there, but it's definitely just a very not a hoppy beer, but very drinkable, very smooth, a bit of citrus and sweetness. So that's our Golden Ale.
Amazing. And shall we crack right on into the IPA? I know this is a little quick.
So on the can, in terms of the artwork, the backdrop is a map of Harlem, the area, the place. We have a little statement on here that's kind of cute. Not sure if you're tasting. IPAs do tend to have quite a bit of a lifespan on the hop and bitterness. So we talk about the mellow finish and bitterness as long as 125th Street. That's how long it lasts. But we'd like to think that. But sort of a play with words. But I've enjoyed the experience. I've been in Harlem half my life, more than 27 years. I went there because I wanted to be a part of the revitalization and walk down the street that all these amazing people and personalities, Billie Holiday, Duke Ellington, Sarah Vaughan, and so many other people I could name that were part of that experience. And I found myself there being involved with a lot of community activities and organizations, and fell in love with all things beer. And my first mentor, interestingly enough, was a guy by the name of Pete Slotsberg. He founded Pete's Wicked Ale, and he was very instrumental in reaching out to emerging brewers, and came to Harlem to give me some feedback on my beers, which is very helpful. So it's been a great journey, and 125th Street IPA is really a tribute to my journey and the journey of many people that have had the opportunity to either grow up in Harlem, visit Harlem, or experience the wonderful history and culture there.
Thank you so much, Celeste, for taking the time and zooming in with us.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, and like hang around, because Celeste, it's not the end for you. I don't think, because we'll start with Denise from Montclair Brewery. Yeah. And so we have two from Montclair as well. We have the Poor Richard's IPA, which is the blue kind of speckled can from Montclair, and then the Noble Life, it is porter. So I was going to suggest sticking with the IPA, but Denise, again, you are our pro, so maybe you have a different.
No, I agree with that. I was thinking that since you guys just had an IPA, so to keep on that same path. Yes, especially since, yep. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Denise Ford Sourdough. I am one half of Montclair Brewery. My husband and I opened it up about 3 years ago. So yeah, this is the Poor Richard's IPA. And this is actually our landmark IPA. And it's funny because he and I are both personally not big IPA lovers. However, we knew if we open up a brewery, we've got to have IPA, because that's like the top selling style of beer, what most craft beer fans love. So we've got to have that. And it's funny, over time, they always say that IPAs, over time, you get more accustomed to it. So it's like certain other things that you eat, like in the beginning, you're like, ooh, I'm not too sure about it. But over time, like your palate gets accustomed to it. So I found that happening to myself, where especially like the Poor Richard's one, I can actually drink that. I actually enjoy it, even though I'm not a huge IPA fan. And so, as I mentioned, this is our landmark IPA, and it's named Poor Richard's after the building that we are in. Actually, the building that the brewery is in Montclair, New Jersey, so not very far from New York at all. I'm actually originally from New York, born in Brooklyn and raised out in Long Island, but have been in New Jersey now for quite a while, though. Very long time. I've been in New Jersey now. But this is named after the building, Poor Richards. It used to be a furniture refinishing shop, actually, and it was called Poor Richards. So lots of people in the community are familiar with that name. So we wanted to pay homage. We're really big on trying to pay homage to our town. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with Montclair, but it's okay. So if you had nods, that's great. So Montclair is known for many different things, and actually a lot of people from Brooklyn end up migrating to Montclair. So sometimes people call it like, okay, is it like the second Brooklyn? What's going on? We've got all these Brooklynites coming to Montclair. And the way we started, so my husband, so a little similar to Celeste, he's a cook. So he cooks everything. And he also, so in addition to beer, he also can make a liquor as well. However, we have a brewery, we don't have a distillery, but he was actually on the Discovery Channel not too long ago, a week or a couple weeks ago, on the Moonshine Master Distillers. So he made a peach brandy. So he is a cook. So even at home, I don't do any cooking. He does everything. Like he's here making dinner now. Actually went to pick up my son, but then he's going to come back and finish dinner. So making beer is like an extension of that. He's also from West Africa. And one of the things is that we knew when we opened up a brewery, we wanted to put pieces of us and our culture into our beers. We said we didn't want to just open up something and just do what everyone else was doing. We wanted to make sure we added pieces of us. So as I mentioned, he's from West Africa. So we have other beers. I mean, sorry, you guys only have 2, I think, or 2 that we'll talk about tonight, but we've got a wide range of beers. We've got actually 24 beers on tap. And I would highly recommend, if you get the chance, to also try our Bowel beer. So we actually won a silver medal in the New York International Beer Competition with that beer. And that beer is made with the baobab fruit from the baobab tree that's in Africa. So we actually import that fruit. All right, so here, I'm gonna crack open my beer too. I've got one. So since I said so what do you guys think of so this is an American IPA. So it means it's more balanced, so it's not hazy like some of the other IPA styles. It's more, and you can smell it. So it's always good when you smell the beer. That kind of helps you like enjoy it better. You can smell like orangey notes, piney notes. And that's because it's got a blend of classic hops that we use, for this. And this one is dry hopped. So you can taste them. You can smell the aroma more because of that, and you also taste it, but it's not bitter. It's not like really bitter. Yeah, so that's Poor Richards IPA.
I have a question about, thank you for giving that background. I have a question just about the IPA. I'm not a big IPA person. I really like this. I'm wondering, like you said, you and your husband aren't big IPA people. Was there something as you like approach trying to create an IPA that hopefully you would like as well? Was there certain aspects of IPAs that you were trying to highlight that you liked and certain parts of IPAs that you didn't like as much? You mentioned haziness is like something you were trying to downplay.
Right. Well, for this style, for this beer in particular. So yeah, so we do brew things that we like, but then we know also that we're not the ones purchasing our beers. So while we want to brew things we like, and in that instance, like the Poor Richards, and I said, I like you, I can drink this one even though I'm not a big IPA fan, is because it's the bittering. So we try to reduce the bittering. However, we did have an IPA in the past called the Collusion, which was very bitter though. But that was done kind of purposely because of the name of the beer and wanted it to be bitter. So we play a lot on different naming of the beers too, sometimes. So yeah, so that one. But typically we try to have it a nice, well balanced, so it's not overly bitter. But we do have another IPA in our normal portfolio. That one's a little bit hazier. And that's the one for people who love IPAs. Then that one's called the National Emergency. That's a New England style IPA. So like that one to me is just a little too hoppy. Meanwhile, some of our servers, employees, that's their favorite beer, and a lot of our customers, that's their favorite one. But for me, not. So
let's talk about, so Noble, like it is porter.
Yeah. Okay, was that
yeah, that's our last beer, and that is it a collaboration with Celeste and yourself?
Yes, with the Montauk Brewery and Harlem Brewing Company. So yes.
Wow.
So we wanted to honor Gil Noble. So hopefully some of you have read up on him if you are not familiar with him. So he is an Emmy Award winning journalist. He was on ABC for over, I think, 30 or 40
years.
Yes, on the TV show, on his news program called Like It Is. So that's why we wanted to honor him. And also he was born in Harlem and then moved to Montclair and spent the last part of his years in Montclair. So Celeste and I have been wanting to collaborate for a while. We've been saying we've got to do something. We have a deep admiration, my husband and I both, for her, being one of the first women, Black women-owned breweries, and especially in our area. And like I said, I am from New York, so I was very familiar with Harlem Brewing Company and always like reading up about all the different advancements that they were doing. So it was an honor to have had met her, and we definitely wanted to do something together. And each year, Montclair Brewery, so this is our third year now of doing a Black History Month series of beer. So for Black History Month, we always do that. And we try to honor a few people. So this year, one of the people that we decided to honor was Gil Noble. We especially like it when we could tie in the Montclair connection. We don't always do that, but every now and then when we are able to, we do. So because he lived in Montclair, raised his family in Montclair, and he made such a huge contribution to all of us in his journalistic skills. And when I found out he was actually born in Harlem, I was like, hey, that's a Harlem connection. We gotta reach out to Harlem Brewing Company and see if they'd like to collaborate with us on this beer. So it was a wonderful experience. We also spoke to Chris Noble, so that's Gil Noble's son. If you go to our YouTube channel or to our website, the link is on our website, montclairbrewery.com. You can see the YouTube video that we interviewed. So Celeste, myself, my husband Leo, we interviewed Chris Noble. He talked about his dad and some of the lessons that he learned from his father and some of his big accomplishments. So yeah, so crack open this one, definitely. And you can smell it. And, got it. What was that? That's okay. And this one now also, in addition to the Harlem connection and the Montclair connection with this beer, Gil Noble parents were from Jamaica. And actually, I'm also of Jamaican descent. So with our brewery too, as I mentioned, we try to put our cultures into it. So we have like brewed with the baobab fruit and some other things from West Africa. We also have brewed with some Jamaican things, spices and fruits. So this one actually has Jamaican pimento seeds. So in the US, we call it allspice, but this is actually, so in Jamaica, it actually grows. So we actually got the Jamaican pimento seeds, and it's brewed with that. So to give it a nice different like spice taste to it. So, and that's how we kind of made it all well-rounded. So it's a porter, which is a dark beer. So, you know, porter is like part of the stout type family. And so a little lighter sometimes in stouts, but very, very close. And that's what we call it, our Jamaican style porter. And on the can too, there is a QR code. So actually you can just scan that QR code and it will take you to the page on our website about all our Black History Month beers, as well as you'll see the link to that YouTube interview that I mentioned earlier. Right there.
Thank you so much. And I'm hoping that this is the first of many collaborations with all three breweries that we are drinking tonight, because I think they're all amazing and really tasty. And we are also starting to reopen. And so we'd love to support local breweries to sell in-house as well. So I'll definitely be in touch with all three of you, Christopher, Celeste, and Denise, on how we can continue partnering with you guys in the future. So next, I'm gonna throw this to our Vice President, Dylan. So Dylan, would you like to properly introduce Professor Dawkins for us all?
Yeah, I just want to first say on behalf of myself and the entire Montauk Club, thank you all of the participants tonight. We're so excited. This has been such a wonderful event. We're going to organize field trips to all your breweries, and we hope that next time you're in Brooklyn, you'll come to us, or I know some of you are in Brooklyn. It's really an honor and really fun and exciting. And I want to explain a little bit about how this event started. First of all, the Montauk Club is a member-owned private social club that's been around. Was founded in 1889. We're right in the center of Brooklyn, more or less, by Grand Army Plaza. And we would like to be central to how people think about Brooklyn's past, present, and future. And in addition to being vice president, I'm also co-chair of the history committee. We've been reading up on some of our famous prior members, had been long very interested in Andrew Cooper, who's known at the Montauk Club as our first African-American member, who we're going to learn about in this next section. And we were very grateful to learn that Professor Wayne Dawkins had written knew and worked with Andrew Cooper and had written a biography about it. And so we all purchased a biography and we're reading it in our history committee. And Katie, who's a part of the history committee, was like, we got to do a beer club event. He worked at Schaefer Brewing. So that's how this event started, and we're just really thrilled. So now I'm going to introduce Professor Dawkins and then give the floor to him for a little bit. So Wayne Dawkins is professor of professional practice at Morgan State University in Baltimore. He previously taught at Hampton University in Virginia. Dawkins was a newspaper journalist in Westchester, New York, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Northwest Indiana, and Hampton Roads, Virginia. His career began in 1977 at Andrew W. Cooper's Trans-Urban News Service, which evolved by 1984 into the City Sun, a Brooklyn weekly that published until 1996. Dawkins is author of City Sun, Andrew W. Cooper's Impact on Modern-Day Brooklyn, published in 2012, and it was released last October as a paperback. Also last October, Dawkins published Emanuel Geller, Immigration and Civil Rights Champion. And I would like to note that in Brooklyn, both Barnes and Nobles have those books in stock, and they can be ordered online through the community bookstore also if you live near there. Dawkins is this author who grew up on Marcy Avenue in Bedford-Stuyvesant, now lives in Suffolk, Virginia with his family. So thank you so much, Professor Dawkins, for making the time for us.
It's a pleasure being here. And my 18 and 22-year-old students call me Professor Dawkins, but since these are adults of drinking age, you can call me Wayne.
Okay, thank you, Wayne.
Okay, so it was a college friend, Morris McCoy, who introduced me to Andy Cooper in June 1977, only weeks after I had graduated from Long Island University. That summer, I volunteered for the startup Trans-Urban News Service, consisting of Cooper, Utrice Lead, Morris McCoy. It was 2 rooms on the 9th floor of a Geralman Street office building. We had a telephone, a landline telephone, I'll add, a typewriter, and a desk. That was the office. By January 1978, I was hired as an intern, reporter, researcher, photographer via a state-funded grant. I was also introduced to Cooper's colleague, who became my other primary mentor, Wayne Barrett of the Village Voice. I was their gopher, assisting Cooper and Barrett as they co-wrote Shirley Chisholm's Compromise for the Village Voice. They wrote 3 of these major exposés. And let me just add, Barrett died shortly after the 2016 election. But if you don't know, he is considered one of the 5 great Donald Trump biographers, because he wrote a book 30 years ago about Donald Trump, which was known in New York, but was largely ignored by everyone else. And when Trump ran for president, people went, oh my God, there's somebody that wrote the definitive book about this man, and it was re-released. Okay. My intern responsibilities at Transurban News Service included taking Cooper's weekly one man's opinion column uptown to the Amsterdam News. I also reported extensively on the Black Orthodox Jewish tensions in Crown Heights during 1978 to 1979, 12 years before the infamous 1991 uprising. By summer of 79, my internship ended, and Cooper wrote an emphatic recommendation letter that I am convinced got me accepted into Columbia J School. You know, it was Wayne Barrett who twisted my arm to apply, but Cooper wrote this amazing letter. I say that because you could hear the battle hymn of the Republic playing and complimenting Cooper's prose when he wrote that letter. Okay, I finished graduate school in May of 1980, and Cooper offered me a job, paying nearly double of what I made as an intern. I declined, however, in order to take a daily newspaper job that paid slightly less. I believed I was fulfilling Andy Cooper's mission to be trained to join what we then called the white-controlled media and help do my part to desegregate that industry. Cooper did manage to recruit me, however, after work to teach at the Transurban News Writers Workshop from 1981 to 1982. I left New York in 1984, and that was the year the City Sun newspaper launched. It lasted 12 years. In 1996, when the City Sun folded, I was working in Northwest Indiana, just outside Chicago. Cooper died in 2002. By 2005, I transitioned from the newsroom to academia. So at this point, Dylan, can you play the book video?
Brooklyn's where I grew up. I grew up in the heart of Bedford-Stuyvesant, off of Tompkins and Marcy Avenues. Andy Cooper was born in Brooklyn. He spent all his years fighting for Brooklyn, and he died in Brooklyn. I learned a lot about politics from Andy, just tagging along with him. He still wrote a column for the Amsterdam News, but he was now running his own news service. You had a compact area in Bedford-Stuyvesant where 80% of the neighbors were Black or Puerto Rican, and somehow that area was carved up into parts of 5 congressional districts, all led by whites from other neighborhoods. Black voting power was diluted. So what Cooper did a year after the Voting Rights Act was passed, he challenged New York State and said Bedford-Stuyvesant is gerrymandered. And after a 2-year battle, he won in the courts, in the federal courts. The district lines were redrawn, and that created the opportunity for Shirley Chisholm to run for the seat and win and make history as the first Black woman to be elected to Congress. A few years after he passed, his widow asked if I would write a biography. What was supposed to be just a little book on her husband turned into a very large book and 7 years of research and writing. It's also, as one reviewer said, it's as much a biography of Brooklyn as it is a biography of the man Andy Cooper.
Tonight is a social event in which beer is involved. Well, Andrew Wells Cooper is your man. He was hired by the Schaefer Brewery in 1951 when he was a young husband and dad. Cooper worked the overnight shift on the loading dock. Now, those are the days when metropolitan New York was the home to major breweries: Schaefer, Rheingold, Ballantine. I might note, I think with the Yankees games, when someone hit a major home run, it was called a Ballantine Blast. And there was Peels. I remember the great Jimmy Breslin did a Peels commercial. Okay, and but those manufacturing jobs, like many in New York, left the region. In the case of Schaefer, they moved the company to Lehigh, Pennsylvania by the late 70s. Cooper did not follow them. He was a blue collar guy for many years at Schaefer until he became politically active. When Cooper helped elect liberal Republican Mayor John V. Lindsay, he was offered an assistant commissioner job in the new administration. Schaefer counteroffered and promoted Cooper to a public affairs and promotions executive job. Now, during the 60s and 70s, and it may be the case in New York, like I said, I left a while ago, Ron Delsener produced these great rock and pop concerts in Central Park, Woolman Skating Rink. And Rheingold used to be the sponsor, but eventually Schaefer became the sponsor of that event. Well, Cooper was involved too. He managed the other side of the house, and that was called the Schaefer Show of Stars, which was music, dances, and fashion shows, usually hosted by local NAACPs, chapters of the Urban League, the Links, these other social organizations. And Schaefer provided the beverages. Just like all night, I've been hearing the sound of cans popping and pouring sounds. Andy Cooper's eye for talent was not accidental. He went to this amazing church near the Sugar Hill section of Harlem that produced a lot of great singers who have, singing church music, but then they became great performers of secular music. So he had this eye for talent. For the Schaefer Circle of Stars, for instance, he booked Patti LaBelle. Yes, that Patti LaBelle. And there was a Long Island girl group that he booked that later developed one of the cast members for the original Dreamgirls on Broadway. So at this point, that legacy of Andy Cooper lives on in his youngest daughter, Jocelyn Andrea Cooper, also known as Joanne. She broke barriers as a music publisher. She has her own company called Midnight Music, but she's probably better known as the co-creator of the Afropunk Festival in Brooklyn. So if you play that piece, please.
Sure.
My job at Afropunk is new business, working on sponsorships and creating relationships with brands that can help us expose our community to new and cool things. Mostly I'm on the phone. I usually have 4 or 5 conference calls a day and running around to meetings with the folks that we work with. Starting off with the amazing Whitney Richardson, our photo editor for our book, and with Sarah Lazon, our literary agent, and had a brilliant meeting about our Afropunk book.
You want text on your pages, don't you?
We want some text on our pages.
On all the pages, or do you want to do text at the beginning?
I think we definitely want to do text at the beginning.
Introducing.
Right, and then some text on some pages, but mostly photos. Mm-hmm. Afropunk is a platform you can use to express your political views, your sexual preferences, to voice your opinion. Matthew Morgan, my partner, curates the music. Over the years, have come in and helped him with some of the larger marquee artists, Lenny Kravitz or Erykah Badu as an example, who have performed at the festival. I have seen the power of the music and the artists that perform at Afropunk that create this space of freedom for people who don't feel free on a daily basis. Does that make it political? Do we believe in activism? Do we believe in pushing culture forward in that way? Yes, we do. Do we encourage that? We surely do. My parents were extremely political people. I didn't really put it all together, the pieces of my father's life that I have mimicked and that completely influenced me. I have a very strong desire to be connected to people who do great work. I have a very strong desire to be excellent in my life, and I like to surround myself with people who feel the same way. I think what really motivates me is wanting to give back to the world and to give back to my culture and to really shift the dialogue and to do really great things for my community.
Okay, as you can see, the fruit doesn't fall very far from the tree. And they had an older daughter, Cooper Andrews, and she now curates the Young Journalist and Training Program at St. Francis College in, right on Remsen Street in downtown. I'll say this about Andy Cooper. There would be uproarious laughter in the Transurban News office when Andy would go to lunch and he'd say, "I'd be right back." And we would be laughing hysterically because that meant he would be away for 2 hours because he knew every lawyer and politician on Court and Geralman Street.
Did Andrew Cooper ever mention the Montauk Club to you?
No. And I don't know if there would be I knew he was very involved in all kinds of, he was a joiner. I mean, he would get involved. So whether it was the Metropolitan Hospital Board or 100 Black Men or Catholic Charities, he just had boundless energy. And Joanne Cooper said that when couples would come over to have dinner, she said basically that was basically organizing meetings with food involved. Just happened to have food and drink involved, but they were these were people who really put it on the line. When they filed that voting rights suit, they could not afford a lawyer. They took out a third mortgage on their home, and they served the papers themselves. In fact, they took it down to one plaintiff in Bay Ridge and dropped the papers at the doorstep and ran. In the other case, and I could not confirm this, I did not get to Governor Hugh Carey before he died, but supposedly Mrs. Cooper took the papers to him. He cordially accepted it, and he said, supposedly said, "What took you so long? It's about time."
I mean, we really appreciate you coming, and we've really enjoyed reading your book. The story of Andy Cooper at the Montauk Club. This is from our longest reigning member, Dino Veronese, who was around when Andy Cooper joined and was actually part of the executive committee that accepted his application. Was at that time, but not now, so don't feel intimidated. There used to be a member interview, and apparently Cooper was referred by Pete Hamill, who was at that time a member of the Montauk Club. Hugh Carey would have been a member of the Montauk Club at that time also. We don't know exactly when it was because we lost all of our records from that period in a flood, but we think it probably would have been right around Lindsay's campaign.
Yes.
Time. And when Cooper also became an executive at Schaefer. And supposedly Andy Cooper said that he had, having grown up in Bed-Stuy, had biked around the Montauk Club as a child and always wondered what was inside, and that Pete Hamill had referred him. So we don't know how long he was a member, but I think at that time, the Montauk Club was a place where people who were, investing in Brooklyn's future were trying to make connections, and we're just really thrilled that he joined, and that you wrote your book, and that we can continue to develop relationships with everybody here who's been present to kind of keep this story alive and promote it. Wayne, could you give us a little preview of the Cellar book?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Here's my elevator speech. Emanuel Cellar, who served for 50 years in Congress representing Brooklyn, is, I say, he's the greatest legislator of the late 20th century. And if you think I'm exaggerating, he co-wrote 3 constitutional amendments, including the much discussed 25th Amendment about presidential succession if the president is sick or dies or is just plumb crazy and we need to get out of here. Yeah, he co-wrote that. And 300 laws have his name on it, but I became interested in him because of his 40-year battle to change immigration reform. We had, from the 1920s, when he had just been elected to Congress, until 1965, something called national origins immigration. And to be crass about it, and I'm going to be crass, that was a point of time when our country decided we only wanted certain kinds of white people immigrating to America. So it was ugly. So it was this backlash against Italians, Jews, I learned a new term. We don't want hunkies here. What's that? These were folks from some of the Slavic Eastern European countries. So there was just this backlash, and he said it's wrong. The area where I live in Brooklyn is diverse before we had such language. So he waged this battle. One thing about Cellar, he was tenacious, and he battled and battled, and finally Cold War politics caught up with us. It was an embarrassment that we were trying to keep people out. So finally the law was changed in 1965. What it meant, if you want to come here legally and you go through the process, it no longer mattered where you came from, Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin America, etc. This affected me personally. I smiled when I heard some of the brewers say they're of Jamaican heritage, where my folks are from Panama and Jamaica. And to show how diverse our family is, one of my aunts is Afro-Chinese. Well, my uncle came through the legal channels and he sent for his family, but he was told his wife, my aunt, could not come yet because we had a quota that's only allowed 100 Asian people to come in the country at a time. But that law was finally changed. It's all in the Cellar book, okay? So it's an amazing story. And he also finally, when he finally lost, he lost in one of the greatest upsets in American political history. He was beaten by a woman who was old enough to be his granddaughter, and you'll know her name. Her name is Elizabeth Holtzman. And she went on to serve. If Cellar had won that election, he would have been chairing the Watergate hearings during that affected President Nixon. But Holtzman made history. There were almost no women in the Congress, and she happened to be on that Judiciary Committee as a young lawyer from Brooklyn. So it's another book. The Cellar book is another Brooklyn story. It's about him, but it's about a lot of things that's been going on in Brooklyn. And as you can see, I can run my mouth, so I'll love to come up and talk about some more about it.
But we can't wait. We really can't wait.
I'm sure they're feeling very happy right now.
I know I certainly am. Well, on that note, I think we should maybe have a good night. I really appreciate everyone, both the presenters and the attendees, for participating in this virtual event.
Thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate it. Christopher, Celeste, Denise, and Professor Dawkins. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well. Good night, everyone.
Home safe, everyone.